my professional career was over, I had an opportunity to join the Ripken organization and come here. I started out selling youth baseball tournaments. Some of you may be aware, Aberdeen is the home of the Ripken Experience Aberdeen, and then there's one in Myrtle Beach, one in Pigeon Forge, and most recently one in Orlando at what used to be known as the Wide World of Sports baseball complex. So I started out with Ripken Baseball selling tournaments. I moved over to the Ironbirds when a position opened up, and 3 years later, Matt Slatus departed for the ballparks of the Palm Beaches, where the Astros and Nationals have spring training, to be their president and GM. And Mr. Ripken gave me an opportunity to step up and be GM. It's been a pleasure being with Aberdeen, and we're really excited because we're 9-4. We're in first place in our division, the Northern Division of what's called the High A East League. I think that they're eventually going to give us a name that is a little bit more well-branded than High A East, but we're waiting for that to happen. You know, I don't have much in the way of prepared remarks. The only thing I like to remind people, because a lot of people know this, and I'm sure that this group knows, but one of the interesting things that people don't always know about minor league baseball is the minor league GM doesn't do anything with players or staff or on-field stuff. The closest I get to the field is making sure that the guys take the field at 7:03 for the national anthem. So, you know, we really appreciate the Orioles and their partnership with us, and we have a great relationship with them. And we're really excited about what Mike Elias and Matt Blood and all of the other player development people are doing, developing players for the future of the Orioles, because in the meantime, all those guys have to be here in Aberdeen and Bowie and Delmarva and Norfolk. So it's really exciting. If anybody has any questions, I'd love to, you know, let you guys pick my brain about what it's like to work here at Leidos Field at Ripken Stadium and interact with all of the other clubs in our league.
Got a question?
Hey, Bruce.
Tell us though what the difference is by being affiliated rather than an independent. Are there restrictions sometimes that you wish you were independent? Or are you mostly glad to be guided?
Sure. Well, it's funny because this topic came up a lot during the restructuring of minor league baseball, because a lot of the teams, 42 or 43 teams that used to be affiliated became independent or collapsed altogether. And part of the reason that there was such strong pushback from those teams is that the calculations that were done in terms of financial cost of being independent versus being affiliated was estimated to be between $300,000 and $500,000 a year in salaries, workers' comp insurance, baseballs, bats, helmets. All of the things that the major league club provides are things that are very expensive. Minor league players don't make much money, but there's 30 of them. And then you've got coaches, and then you've got bats and balls and helmets and all of the various administrative things that come along with employing all of those people. That is the major difference, is that the Baltimore Orioles, they scout the guys, they draft the guys, or they sign them as free agents, they employ the players, they insure the players, they feed the players, they do all of the things that an employer would. And I am lucky because if I can put on a good show and provide an adequate player development atmosphere, the clubhouse, the batting cages, the bullpens, the field, the lights, the buses, if I can provide all of those things, we have a good partnership to continue to remain affiliated. And obviously it doesn't hurt that my owner played pretty well for the Orioles when he was employed by them.
Okay.
Hey, John.
Jack, I just was reading Baseball America, and it said, the minor league issue, it said you have a big challenge this year because you can't use some of the promotion stuff that you did between innings because you're forbidden from contact rules as a result of doing that. What are you doing to entice, like, between innings and get the younger kids involved? And do you agree you have a big challenge this year?
You know, 2 weeks ago, we had a much bigger challenge than we do today. We're very lucky that a few things have happened. Thing number one, within the last 10 days, Major League Baseball has lifted their prohibition on on-field demonstrations and promotions, meaning that as long as we're 12 feet away from the players and we're not on the infield, we can be in the shallow outfield, or we can be behind home plate. we can be on the aprons, but as long as we're 12 feet away from players, we can now do things like on field, ring toss, or we can do national anthem. We can do ceremonial first pitches, as long as you're not throwing to a player. So 2 weeks ago, we were in really bad shape and we were really struggling. But the good news is that minor league baseball is known for creativity and excitement and fun promotions. And so a lot of the things that you normally would have seen on the field, we were trying to pivot to do virtually or on the video board. So instead of taking fans down to the top of the dugout and asking them movie trivia questions on top of the dugout, we were doing it in the seating bowl. Instead of having first pitches take place before the game, we were shooting them on video the week before the team is in town, and then we were going to display them on the video board. And so we were trying to do all of the things that you would normally see and create that same atmosphere, but do it in a way that didn't infringe on the proximity. But the challenge that you identified, which is engaging with the kids and engaging with the youth, continues to be a challenge, because I can't have them go out there and take the field with the team. I can't have them go out and use the big toothbrush to brush the bases between innings. I can't have them, I can't play catch on the field while the players are getting warm for the game. And so we're really hopeful that two things is going to happen. One, we're hopeful that people are so desperate and excited for baseball that they're going to come out and watch the games anyway and enjoy the atmosphere of Lighthouse Field at Ripken Stadium. And we've got fireworks on Friday night, and we've got all sorts of interesting new concessions stuff in the ballpark. But thing number two is we're hopeful that just like the state of Maryland has continued to reopen and remove restrictions, we're hopeful that Major League Baseball will do the same as the players, the quantity of players, percentage of players who are getting vaccinated increases, because eventually we know that baseball will return, entertainment will return, and we'll just be, back to whatever version of normal we eventually get to.
Jack, can I ask a question about the Ripken fields for a second?
Please, yeah.
All right. You mentioned earlier the big Ripken complexes. Will those have like leagues playing or just tournament ball?
Yeah, so the Ripken organization, the Ripken experience as it's known, does not engage in what most people traditionally think of as a governing body, like leagues, like you would think of Little League, the Cal Ripken League, which is actually owned by Babe Ruth International, USSSA, AAU. We don't do that. We find that that's a little bit restrictive because it requires you to pay league dues. It requires you to adhere to specific structures and zip codes and all sorts of weird, nuanced things that vary from league to league. Our goal and the Ripken organization goal in those youth baseball tournament facilities is to provide the highest quality baseball experience we possibly can for any group of kids who fit in the right age category. So we're still using the April 30, May 1 birth date. And so if you fall in the calendar year birth date and you can, field a group of kids who all want to wear the same uniform for a weekend, we want you to come and have a good time.
All right, because when you mention the cities, Toledo, Ohio has a Ripken field.
Oh, okay. So the Ripken field that you're thinking of was probably built by the Cal Ripken Senior Foundation. If you go to the field, I bet that the scoreboard has a Cal Ripken Senior Foundation logo on it. And they've built over 100 youth baseball facilities across the country in cities like Toledo and Baltimore and Cleveland and Sarasota, Florida, and my hometown of Bridgeport, Connecticut. So if you think of Cal's world as an umbrella, the Ripken Experience is the youth baseball for-profit tournaments facility. The Ironbirds are the professional baseball team, and the Cal Ripken Senior Foundation is the nonprofit, charitable, philanthropic organization that goes to communities around the country and builds these youth baseball fields.
All right. So who determines what kind of baseball is played there?
That would be the local nonprofit organization that the Senior Foundation leaves the field for. So for example, here in Aberdeen, they actually built a local one and they named it Vi Ripken Field, and they gave it to the local Boys and Girls Club. So the Boys and Girls Club decides who can rent it, who can use it, what times, what restrictions there are. They maintain the facility, But instead of having to shill out $1.5 million to build a field, Cal and his foundation do it for them.
All right. Are the distances from home plate into first to second, are those permanent setups for, I'm going to call them peewee baseball versus Colt baseball or senior baseball?
Right. I can't speak for your specific facility because there's over 100 of these fields now. Sometimes they build youth diamonds for 12 and under. Sometimes they build high school fields, like they built Frank Robinson Field in Baltimore, as I think it's a full-size diamond that high schoolers can use. But typically, when they build the youth fields for 12 and under, they build them with 60-foot base anchors and 70-foot base anchors. And then the larger fields, they build with 90-foot base anchors.
All right.
I've heard of things like 75-foot bases for pony or some other interesting governing bodies. Yeah, but typically it's 60 and 70 and then 90.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Absolutely. Hey, Bruce.
Is everybody inoculated?
Is everybody inoculated on my staff, on my minor league baseball staff?
Staff, players, yourself, etc.
So our staff, the people who are employed by Ripken Professional Baseball LLC, we are inoculated. The concessions company, Professional Sports Catering LLC, they're a subsidiary of Levy, who operate Nats Park, FedEx Field in DC, San Francisco Giants. I don't know the percentage of their large group of concessions people who are or are not inoculated currently. They're a separate corporation, HIPAA and all that. And the players, again, for HIPAA reasons, the Orioles will not give us a list of who is and is not inoculated on the field. But we know that they're working towards getting as many guys vaccinated as they possibly can, because when they hit a certain threshold, some of the restrictions on autographs, media access, my access to the clubhouse, what kind of food we can serve them will change. But for HIPAA reasons, they cannot tell me who that is employed by Baltimore Orioles Baseball Club are or are not inoculated.
I guess I'm wondering if you have somebody who's a high draft choice who turns out to be an anti-vaxxer. Have you ever run into that?
I would say that would be Mike Elias's problem, and I'm glad for that.
Okay.
David?
I was wondering, I know that there was uncertainty of what level you would end up in. It was certain you were going to remain affiliated. I don't think that was ever an issue.
Right.
But there was some talk of you going to AA or the high A as you ended up. Are you happy with that choice where you ended up?
Yeah, we're thrilled with high A. Obviously, we would have loved to have been AA because it's, every level that you move up means a higher level of prospect that people can come and see. We've gotten more phone calls in the last 3 weeks about when Grayson Rodriguez is going to pitch than we've gotten in the last 3 years about players coming to play in Aberdeen, aside from when Adley was coming. People were really excited about Adley in 2019. So we're very happy with it. We think that the level that we're at, high A, is a really good, pretty stable level. Some of the things people don't think about with being a minor league club is the amount of times the guys have to change jerseys, or the amount of transactions that happen, or how often the roster turns over. When we were a short season club, we would have between 100 and 150 players play for it. Well, transactions. So a guy would come up from the GCL and then go back down. A guy would go from Aberdeen up to Delmarva and then come back down. A guy would get hurt and do 2 weeks of rehab from Bowie and then go back up. So we had a lot of turnover. In high A, they're a high enough level prospect where they have probably not going to go back down to Delmarva or get cut immediately. But they're not so high a level prospect that they're in AA and are going to bounce between the big leagues in AA or AAA and AA. So we're sort of a Goldilocks zone there, if you will, because you've got the GCL rookie ball, you've got Delmarva, then us, then you've got Bowie and Norfolk. So we've got 2 levels on either side of us. So we're sort of like the middle of the tug of war rope in terms of the prospects that we have. So we're really happy with it, and we're really excited about, the pipeline of prospects will come through. Very rarely will guys skip us the way that Peyton Grenier or certain other prospects jumped over short season baseball.
Do you have any players who were with you in short season who will now be with you in AA? I mean, IA.
We do. Let me pull up my roster because we have several who were with us back in 2019. Specifically, the guys who jump to mind are Maverick Hanley, Kyle Stowers, Kyle Bernovich, the Cody Roberts, Connor Gillespie, Blaine Knight spent some time in Aberdeen. Dallas Litcher is hurt, but he was here before. Kevin McGee, Morgan McSweeney. I think Nick Roth was here for a period of time. And then Andrew Dashbach, Adam Hull, I think had a short stint here in Aberdeen in 2018. I can't recall exactly. Joey Ortiz, Toby Welk, Shane Fontana, Johnny Reiser, like I said, Kyle Stowers, and Zach Watson, all of whom have played in Aberdeen before. So at least 60 to 70% of our roster was with us at some point in the past, whether it was 18 or 19.
Yeah, you mentioned about the High A East League, the name.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bunch of folks on our SABR blog that are really upset about the disappearance of the Pacific Coast League, the International League, the American Association. So they say that supposedly minor league baseball still exists as an entity in Florida, and they're holding these names, and baseball, Major League Baseball, is going to have to pay to use them again. And then the second thing that their folks are really upset about is that you're looking for corporate sponsorship for these leagues. So you might become the Coca-Cola League or something like that. Yeah. What do you hear about that?
So I can't speak for the PCL or the International League or the Texas League or any of those, but what I can tell you is that the New York Penn League name is not owned by the minor league baseball offices in St. Petersburg, also known as the National Association of Professional Baseball Leagues. It's actually owned by its composite teams, the members of the league. So at one point, and it's very unclear legally right now, but at one point, the Aberdeen Ironbirds owned 1/14 of the New York Penn League, and so we had an ownership stake in the intellectual property associated with that name, those marks, that history. And there was conversation about, does anyone want to pay money for that name? But honestly, it's a personal opinion that no one else has to share. But I don't know that that name holds a lot of value anymore, because the likelihood that a group of teams from New York and Pennsylvania and the surrounding areas could adequately combine to create a league that would be functional. Because when you look at professional baseball, where we have budgets for buses and some teams even fly occasionally, we can travel, but these college wood bat league teams like the Cape Cod League, the Perfect Game League, the New York Collegiate Baseball League, those leagues exist in such small geographic circles that for teams to exist in New York and Pennsylvania at any given time is very unlikely. But moreover, I don't know that any organizations like that would want to spend any money, A, to acquire the intellectual property, and B, to then protect it with a lawyer and copyright and all of those things. So it's a personal opinion, but I don't know necessarily that we will see the return of those, because I don't know that anyone wants to pay, even if it was only $1 to acquire it. It's possible that no one would want to then legally pay to protect that IP.
About sponsorship.
The sponsorship piece is interesting. One thing that I think a lot of baseball fans understand intellectually, but don't necessarily appreciate that much, which I understand, is baseball is a business ultimately. And I was having a conversation with a fan yesterday about this on an unrelated topic, but ultimately we are a business. Our ownership and our staff rely on us to make money. We are not here to lose money, even though some minor league teams do. So ultimately, cash is going to be king in that particular circumstance. If Coke wants to pay $20 million to sponsor what used to be the International League, those 12 teams or 16 teams are going to take that money. It would be stupid for them to not take that money, because it's money that they can put back into their ballparks and into their local economies. So it may not be something we get used to anytime soon. It may be a while before we really accept that that sort of thing can happen. But, we got used to the Orange Bowl. We got used to the, Tostitos Bowl. We got used to, those things. And I've gotten used to Leidos Field at Ripken Stadium instead of just Ripken Stadium. So it's unusual, but I think ultimately it will become part of our environment. Hey, Paul.
Hi. Okay, a couple questions. Are you or your league or the Ironbirds, are they involved in any of the MLB rules changes, or is that just independent ball, number one? And number two, what is the real reality at A ball for kids that are actually going to make it to the bigs? What is
Sure.
the rate of attrition for young men in the minor league system?
It's a good question. I'm trying to find the email I have from baseball about the rule changes, but I'm not seeing it right now. I'm sure that it's online. I'm sure Baseball America or somebody put it out, but baseball does not consult us before changing the rules. They decide who has pitch clocks. They decide who, has to implement the 2 pickoff attempt rule. They decide who has to, there's new rules this year about on a certain level, all infielders have to be inside the dirt. They can't stand on the outfield grass. They can't shift into the grass, and 2 infielders have to be on either side of second base. They don't ask us those things because ultimately their umpires are going to enforce it, and they decide. And the one that is most commonplace now, because it's in the big leagues now, is they did not ask us before deciding to put a runner on second base in the 10th inning. So
Hate it.
Yeah, I mean,
Hate it.
I don't blame you. Ultimately, it's interesting to see, because I think a lot of baseball traditionalists hate the shift, and so they love the rule about not allowing teams to shift. But a lot of baseball traditionalists also hate the rule about having to put a guy on second base. So it's a very weird push and pull between traditionalists and people who really would like the game to go faster. And then from a perspective of the reality of A ball, obviously high A baseball, a higher number of guys who play for our team today will make it to the big leagues than they did in 2019 when we were a New York Penn League affiliate. I remember telling people, fans, that when Adley was in Aberdeen, that there were 70 guys on the field, 35 for the other team and 35 for the Ironbirds. And if 4 of those guys got to the big leagues, that would have exceeded expectations.
Wow.
It's really very unlikely that a significant number of guys will go to the big leagues. And as a demonstration, as an example of that, I played in Aberdeen in 2013, and we happened to win the McNamara division. We went to the playoffs, the only time the Ironbirds have ever made a playoff run, and I attribute it to my amazing bullpen catching skills, but everyone else seems to attribute it to Trey Mancini, Mike Yastrzemski, Donnie Hart, Hunter Harvey, Chance Sisco, Austin Wins, and a number of other guys who are already big leaguers or have been big leaguers at one point. Because we were so stacked, that team was, and Stephen Brault, who's with the Pirates, we had 7 or 8 guys who have had a cup of coffee or more in the big leagues. Trey Mancini through All-Star. And that is very unusual. Realistically, out of a 35-man roster with 70 to 100 transactions, if 3 guys make it to the big leagues from a single New York Penn League roster, typically that's counted as a pretty successful minor league baseball team.
Wow.
So high A, you might see 5 to 10 guys out there who will eventually play in the big leagues in some capacity. But the truth is that until Major League Baseball, or if Major League Baseball ever makes the minor leagues scale down to 2 or 3 levels, realistically, the majority of guys will never play the big leagues.
Wow. It's just the death knell of minor league baseball. What are the majors going to do? How are they going to feed themselves?
Well, unfortunately, in my opinion, it's unfortunate. There is a movement among Major League Baseball executives who believe that the actual minor league affiliates, the local stadiums that are in local markets are not needed to develop players. If you look at the spring training model where they have 150 guys at minor league camp, which could make, let's say 5 teams of 30, they don't need to go to Aberdeen. They don't need to go to Salisbury. They don't need to go to Corpus Christi. They don't need to go to Temecula. They can play games at their spring training facilities far easier than they can at our facilities. We have to get on the bus and ride 14 hours to Bowling Green, Kentucky later this season. If they decided, and I certainly hope that they don't, but if they decided that minor league baseball in the affiliated fashion is over, they could just pull all their guys into their spring training facilities and play in Florida and Arizona at their spring training complexes on the backfields. And the only guys we would ever see play would be in the big leagues. If they wanted to, they could just do it. And there are some Major League Baseball executives who believe that it doesn't matter if they do that or don't do that, because to them, an at-bat in Florida is just as good as an at-bat in Aberdeen.
Well, I guess that's sort of the pandemic thinking that, working from home was so successful that who needs to go into a brick and mortar store anymore?
Right.
mean,
Yeah. Well,
Only
I
if
think
you're selling jeans.
I think that the major thing that they may be overlooking, which I think you sort of hinted at a little bit, is the fanhood situation. If you look at the old New York Penn League that was Batavia, Auburn, Jamestown, Utica, Little Falls, Glens Falls, Amsterdam. If you look at those teams in upstate New York who lost all of their minor league baseball teams, all those former New York Penn League clubs, at this point, their nearest professional team, let alone major league team, is 4 to 5 hours away. And so if I was a kid growing up in Utica and I had to choose between being a Toronto Blue Jays fan, a New York Yankees fan, a Cleveland Indians fan, or picking the Buffalo Sabres hockey team to support, it would be pretty hard for me to justify being a baseball fan with a Buffalo football team and a Buffalo hockey team nearby instead, which I think is the scariest thing for Major League Baseball, or it should be, is where will not necessarily their players come from, but their fans. I think that's the question that they need to ask themselves.
They're losing them more and more, as far as I'm concerned, with the concession prices the way they are, with the ticket prices the way they are, and like you said, with the length of play, which is causing a lot of consternation.
Yeah.
For a lot of people.
Yeah.
It might be getting better.
There's a balance there. I was having a conversation with my father yesterday. He came to opening day, which I was very glad that he was able to come and see the stadium. But we were talking about it, and I said, okay, what's the conversation we're having? Are we having a conversation about how long the game is or how slow the game is? Because if the conversation we're having is the game goes too slowly because there's too many pickoffs, or the pitchers take too long in between batters, or the walk-up music takes too long to play, if we're having those conversations, those are easy things to fix with pitch clocks and with, speeding up the batter and with disallowing pickoff moves. But if we're talking about how long the game is, realistically, the only way to shorten the game in terms of length of time is to start chopping off innings. So, the only way to make the game, to make people not complain about how the baseball game is 3 hours, like our game was last night, is to just decide that the 8th and 9th innings aren't worth it. And we'll just play 7 innings like in high school, which I don't think is the right solution either.
Sorry for that, for the phone ringing. What's the justification of, I think is Bruce Brown there? Bruce is there. Okay, you can help me on this one. The shortest doubleheader ever played between the Yankees and the Senators, I believe, or the Yankees and someone, was 2 hours and 15 minutes for 2 baseball games. It's happened before. Why is it that it can't happen now? Guys stepping out to readjust their laundry and their knickers and everything else between every single pitch becomes stupid as far as I'm concerned. And when, like you say, pickoff moves and the time between pitches, et cetera, and how many of the umpires are actually really looking at the pitch clock.
Right. Well,
I mean,
and I'm
I've
sure.
I've gone to games and I've watched the pitch clock and it's gone and they're down to the last second and the guy's still got the ball on, and the umpire's not calling anything. So.
Right. Well, and I think that Bruce probably has some input on that as well. But there's all sorts of rules about, well, has the pitcher come set, and is he delaying the game, or is he just, is he making a good faith effort to make the pitch? All of these things, but I don't know that any of these things are really going to improve until we either decide to take them seriously, like you said, or fundamentally change the way that the game is played. Meaning, no more walk-up music, no more in-game promotions, no more sponsorship breaks, no more TV timeouts, all of those things. So it's a great question, and I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts on, do we want the game to be shorter, or do we enjoy 2.5 hours at the ballpark with 3 hot dogs and an ice cream cone and maybe a couple of Miller Lights?
2.5 hours, 2.5 hours ballpark would be wonderful. 3.5 hours, okay, is getting to be a bit too long for the Dookus to sit too long.
Yeah.
And
Paul, let me just comment that the 2-hour doubleheader you reference, I would be very interested if somebody took the total compensation of everybody on the field and in the dugout of those games and see if it would add up to one at bat for Mike Trout. All the things that slow the game down pay for the game. They pay for high salaries. They pay for these guys who are now mega superstars and millionaires.
Well, that's exactly right. Ultimately,
it's about money,
it's ultimately a business. And so every time that the pitcher steps off the mound or makes a pickoff, and we can read an ad for the local construction company, or we can drop in the name of the movie playing at the local movie theater, we get paid. And so, if you, and minor league teams, we're not by any means raking in the dollars. Most minor league teams are not profitable, but we need to decide, is that the format we want, or do we just want an organ player and a PA announcer and, to go back to Bull Durham, 1986 or whatever year that movie was produced?
Just a question. How long do football games last?
Plenty longer than 3 hours, that's for sure.
Yeah. Because there's
Nobody
not that
complains
many of
about
them.
that.
They need more television timeout.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. No one complains about that.
I don't
No.
mind a 3-hour
I do.
game or even a
I won't watch
3.5
football.
hour game. The part that I sort of would like to see curtailed somewhat is the music that announces the player.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes he doesn't approach home plate until his song arrives.
Yeah.
And really, I don't care what the heck the music is. I don't really see a connection too often. The second is the adjustment, as someone mentioned, the batting gloves, the helmet, the shoes, whatever. I think somehow we need to curtail those two events to help speed up the game. Personally, I enjoy sitting at the ballpark, June, July, August, evening game, whether it's 2.5 hours or longer. To me, that's fun.
Yeah.
I want to see the players really move. I want to see some action. I really don't want to see a guy standing, adjusting.
Right. Well, and back in the day when they didn't wear batting helmets or batting gloves, or some of the guys were just out there in whatever they came to the ballpark in, it was very different. And these guys are numerous things. A, they're investments, but B, they're brands. David Ortiz, Mike Trout, the Tatis Jr. These guys are brands. They're entities unto themselves, and so people are there to watch them. And I think that a lot of people forget that the younger generation are there for the spectacle of those individual guys and not the game as a whole. It used to be about the name on the front and not the name on the back. And that's just not the case anymore. And so just as I sell sponsorship and advertising for my stadium and for the team itself, these guys are selling themselves as spectacles.
I would
Well,
like
I
to
think,
add that.
I
would,
think, you can, cater or work with the new generation of fans. But I think there's some compromise territory too, that there are people who do enjoy the game, and you can't slice off, 2 or 3 fingers to save the other, 3 or on your hands, but
Yeah.
yeah. All right. Thank you, Jack.
but
No, absolutely.
Tom, I'd like to add to that. I would be very happy even to pay extra to watch Nomar Garcia Parra adjust his batting gloves one more time. I think that's part of who he is. I think that's part of the charm of the game. And
Really?
I really do.
Yeah.
I really
I'll
do.
put it on the video board. Don't
I-
forget Mike Hargrove,
Yeah, the human rain delay.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But these guys had a shtick. Most of the current guys, they don't. There's nothing different between a New York Yankee adjusting his batting gear from a Baltimore Oriole guy. The only differences might be a bat flip.
Well, I would say one of the differences is the time between pitches is closely measured. And every infielder in the majors knows who takes a long time and knows who pitches quickly. And
Yeah.
sometimes if you force that guy to pitch quickly, he just can't pitch well.
Well, and on the other hand, you look at a guy like Clayton Kershaw, who has incredible pace and is extremely successful most games. He puts a lot of pressure on the batter to get in the box and face the pitch.
Right.
I think,
Right.
when you go back and watch video of Bob Feller or some of the folks of that generation, throw the ball, get back on the rubber, throw the next ball. And they were very successful. And the guys who give the hitter a lot of time to recuperate are hurting themselves, I think. As a catcher, as a guy who used to say, get on the mound, take the signal, let's throw the pitch. I know as a hitter, I liked having as much time as I wanted because I could get set, I could waggle my bat, I could do whatever I wanted. I think that the guys who have good pace, ultimately, I think, and this is the SABR group, so you would know more about this statistic than I would, but if you could measure pace for a pitcher compared to ERA, I think you would see that the quicker the pace, the shorter time between pitches, the smaller the ERA. I would guess that's a theory.
And I think you
Pick
can
up on that.
add into that. The other thing you could add into that measure is the composite number of errors for infielders. Because I think that the longer an infielder has to wait for that ball to come, the little his attention span is just he's a human being.
Yep, absolutely.
To pick up on that, Gabe Kapler, San Francisco Giants, I'm a Giants fan, they are emphasizing the pace at which a pitcher pitches and really making the pitcher pitch faster, get in that groove and pitch. And they have right now, I think, the lowest ERA of starting pitchers in the major leagues. Okay, I believe I'm right about that, Bruce.
That would be the first place San Francisco Giants.
Yeah, first place. By the way, Jack, I have a question. You said you played with Yastrzemski.
Yeah.
Why did the Orioles give up with him? When you played for Aberdeen, did you think he was going to make the major leagues?
He's a talented guy, and I think the things that he was best at maybe weren't appreciated at the time. He has much like his grandfather, he has an incredible understanding of the strike zone. He has a really great approach at the plate. He is a guy who understands what a pitcher is trying to do to him and how to combat it. But unfortunately, I think that physically he doesn't compare to the guys like Trey Mancini and some of the larger guys, some of the more toolsy guys who are out there. I mean, he is a good defender, not great. He runs okay, but he's not going to steal 50 bases. He hits for average, but 295 to 305 some years. I think he's having a tough year this year. He'll hit 7 home runs, but not 27. And his arm from the outfield is, I guess we could call it maybe a 55 or a 60. He's slightly below average. But when you take all of those things, when you take a slightly below average major leaguer across all the categories, you've got a guy who's a major league. Whereas, you know, a guy like Miguel Cabrera does not run well anymore, but he still hits 30 home runs. So I think that Mike is a guy who does not have what most people would traditionally call 5 tools, but he's close in a lot of categories.
He's actually showed a lot more power with the Giants than he did with the Orioles.
Yeah. He's got the ability to get the head out on the bat and ambush a fastball. We saw that a couple of times. I saw him hit a ball probably 410 feet in Charleston, West Virginia. There's a street behind the right field wall. He hit it over the road. He's a tremendous baseball player and a really nice guy. I really like him. But I think that, you know, he didn't pop until he got a chance with a different organization. Bruce,
Okay, I have had the opportunity in the last 18 months to have a relationship with Eddie Zosky's mother. Eddie Zosky's not very well known. He was a bench support guy for the Blue Jays back in their glory years of the mid 90s. But as I talked to her about Eddie and his career, she said he deserves not to be in there. He just doesn't have heart. He could run, he could throw, he's a decent hitter, great range in the field, all of those things. Said he didn't really care. And you take a guy like Yastrzemski, it's very hard to measure heart, but you take a good manager, could take a good baseball guy, he can see it. He can smell that determination.
Yeah. I mean, we had Ryan Miner in Delmarva, who obviously was the first guy to play third base when Cal finally sat down. And we had Matt Marullo in Aberdeen, who was in Cleveland for a number of years as a catcher. Guys who played the game, were around the game, understood the game, and they really appreciated Mike. And Mike was a really great guy for those clubs. And he happened to be surrounded by some pretty talented guys who ended up being in the big leagues as well. So I think the other thing to be said for Mike Yastrzemski is he went to a really tremendous university in Vanderbilt, a great baseball program, but also a good academic school. He proved that he's more than just an athlete. You know, they say student comes first. So he's a student of the game, but he also was a genuinely good student who went to college. And, you know, there's an interesting statistic that I'm sure it fluctuates from year to year, but when you look at the major leagues as a whole block of 750 guys, or I guess it's increased to slightly more than 750 now with the 26th man. But when you look at them as a block and you look at who those guys are, where they were drafted, and whether they went to college or not, the statistic that the Orioles discovered back in 2013 was that if you take the top 3 rounds of the draft out of it, the obvious superstars, the Manny Machados, the Fernando Tatis Jr.'s, the Bryce Harpers, the Mike Trouts, the obvious superstars in the top 3 rounds. And you look at rounds 4 through 40, there used to be 40 rounds, obviously, the draft used to be 50. The guys who end up making it to the major leagues, who are drafted in rounds 2 through 40 or 4 through 40, 92% of them were college guys. So that means that if you get drafted after the 3rd round, you're not an obvious superstar right off the bat, chances are you would serve yourself well by going and getting a couple extra years of development in college baseball, and also development as a person, in order to give yourself a better chance to go to the big leagues. So it's an interesting statistic that may be changing, and that number may even increase.
There's a question for you in chat.
How does your new turf compare to real grass? What new rules are being used in your league? So the new turf, I'm being told by the players and coaches that it compares very comparably to grass, with the exception of the fact that there's no more bad hops at the lifts. So the proprietary blend of crumb rubber and sand that's distributed throughout our field, you've got the tentacles, the strands of synthetic turf, and then within the synthetic turf, there are those black rubber pellets, the crumb rubber, and sand. In the areas that are green to simulate grass, it's 50-50. So it's an even mixture of crumb rubber and sand. But in the areas that are reddish brown to simulate dirt, it's 80% sand. So it's much harder. So as if you were hitting a ball off of that hard clay that you see in the infield, it gives it a little bit more skip. So all the scientific research that's gone into synthetic turf in the last 40 years has really culminated in these synthetic turf fields being very similar to grass, but giving the advantage of no bad hops, no grooming, no moisture, no differentiation of play from one area to another. It saves me a ton of money, which I love, but it also really truly simulates pretty comparably, and to the point where, you know, the Orioles were okay with turf because they're playing 30% of their road games on turf this year. If you look at Miami, Texas, Toronto, Tampa Bay, and Houston, they're playing 30% of their road games on turf. So these guys have got to get used to it. And I don't recall what new rules are being implemented in High A East. I don't think any that I can recall. I'll also address the other question in the chat, which was we're increasing to full capacity as soon as the mass vaccination site that's in our parking lot gives us the other 50% of our parking back. So as soon as people are done getting shots, which we think is going to be the third week of June, we're going to recapture 50% more parking, and that way we can pack the ballpark for July 4th, Independence Day. We're really excited about it. Paul?
And now, when you're talking about the field and the surfaces, and I watch a lot of baseball on TV, with the exception of, well, even not so much with Wrigley and Boston, Fenway Park, it seems like all the stadiums now are cookie cutter stadiums. No matter where you play, if you play in Washington or if you play in Seattle or any place, it doesn't matter where you play. The field everywhere is going to be the same. The site, the what do they call, the batting eye, is always going to be the same out in the outfield.
Right.
You've taken away the quirky hops. You've taken away the possible pebble on the field that won the 1933 series for the Washington Senators. And thank God for the pebble. Okay, we needed it. It was the only World Series we had since 2016. And anyway, it's turned the whole game into being predictable, pretty much.
Yeah.
It brings me to the next question, which is the three probable outcomes, which seems to be still the three probable outcomes when I watch a game: a walk, a strikeout, or a home run.
Yeah. Which
cuts down on the amount of action that's going on these beautifully manicured fields.
Right.
So it's turning baseball into something that's really, really homogenized, and it's taking all the guesswork, everything out. And if they ever put in the what do they call the ball track at home plate?
The robot umpire, sure.
The robot umpire. If they put that in, I'm gone. It's as simple as that.
Paul, if I didn't know your age, I could have told you based on your comments.
Yeah, I think that
I didn't hear you, Bruce. What did you say?
I said, if I didn't know your age, which I do already, I could have told it just by reading your comments.
Okay, yeah. I'm old. I'm a traditionalist. I'm not as bad as Clark Griffith was, but it's still, it takes away the heart and soul of the game.
Sure.
And we don't like Angel Hernandez, but okay, he makes mistakes. That's what the umpires are there for.
Right. It's interesting you say that, and I'm sure that you know this, but I'll point it out for those who may not. The batter's eye itself is a regulated rule. It must be a certain height. It must be black. There may not be anyone sitting in it, and so that's become, like you said, homogenized across baseball. But the stadiums themselves, as we've talked about repeatedly, they're more of a product to be sold than a product of their environment. When you look at Fenway Park, that green monster is not there for fun. It's not there to be interesting. It's there because they had to build a really tall wall because they could only go 270 feet away because there was a building there. So these quirks that we're familiar with are quirks and products of the environment in which the ballpark was built. And I'm not saying we shouldn't incorporate fun, interesting, quirky things into our ballparks, but when you look at SunTrust Park that was built out on a huge tract of open land, they could do whatever they wanted. So they built a big stadium that looks just like every other big stadium that we've seen in the last 20 years. So I agree entirely. And I think the interesting question with the three outcomes is, are we willing to change the game in order to change the outcomes? I think that, you and I would agree that 60 feet, 6 inches is a sacred number. It's a sacred part of the game. It is exactly between home and second. It is exactly between first and third. But these guys get bigger and stronger and can throw the ball harder. So the only way to change the outcome of some of these at-bats would be to move them back. And we don't want to do that. We don't want to move a guy back further away from the stadium or from the home plate. So unfortunately, in order to achieve some of the more traditional outcomes, we might need to change some of the traditional components of the game. And like we talked about earlier, the only way to truly make the game shorter is to make the game shorter. Let's go 7 innings. Because what are we really arguing about, right? Are we arguing about the game's too long, or are we arguing about kids today have too short an attention?
The latter.
Right.
The
Right.
latter.
So-
And adults too.
Yeah.
You watch baseball on TV and everybody's like this,
Right.
Nobody's
Yeah.
watching the game. They're playing solitaire while they're watching the ball game.
Yeah, absolutely. 2 comments in the chat. Number 1, the best part of my job every day. I'll give you guys 2 answers to that. Answer number 1 is the amount of passion and excitement that our fans have for the team. When the building was built in 2002, it was the most exciting thing to come to Aberdeen since the proving ground 60 years prior. So we were really excited. People really take ownership of this team and feel strongly about how we run the stadium, how we run the team, how the team does, what sort of promotions we do. They take ownership of it as if it's truly their team, and we're proud of that. But on an unrelated note, one of the favorite parts of my job is coming to work and working with really great people. To work in baseball or work in sports in general, you have to be a pretty unique kind of individual. You have to be willing to work 20-hour days. You have to be willing to work 285 days a year or more. You have to work crazy hours, crazy jobs. You have to be willing to go out and wipe bird poop off of stadium seats before fans get in the building. You have to do all of these things that are required to put on a show. And so it really creates a really tight-knit family that I enjoy coming to the ballpark and working with every day. And I'm really proud of the staff that I have and the people that I work with. And I'll thank Karen for adding in our chat the rule change for high A, that pitchers have to leave the rubber completely before throwing to a base, which is funny because I thought that was always a rule. And when they said that in the rule change information, I was like, yeah, that's always been a balk, but I guess we're just going to enforce it now. So that's fine by me.
So Jack, here's a personal question. It appears that you have had a gravity event, I'll call it, in that the hair used to go up and now it's coming all down the part of your head. I don't know.
Yes, I
It would be
said to-
harder to shave something you can't see than something you can. I don't know.
That's right. It's funny. I said to somebody recently, my hair was trying to quit on me, so I fired it. I'd rather be completely shiny than let it go back and back and back the way that my mother the way that my mother's father and her brothers are. So we know how that genetic works.
There was an interesting item on the news that they had tried some facial recognition software modified for soccer games so that the camera could always be on the soccer ball. And however, it was confused with the elderly umpires whose head looked too much like a soccer ball.
I like that. That's nice. That's good. Wonderful. Well, go ahead, Tom. You have to unmute. There you go. Oh, there we go.
A couple questions. The first is we've been in Aberdeen. It's a very nice complex.
Thank you.
the Ironbirds play, but obviously they're not playing 24 hours a day. They're just playing night games or day games. The complex is bigger than that. Is the Cal Ripken experience kids going on all the time otherwise? And
Right. So in Aberdeen, about 75 to 80% of the programming that takes place is weekends. So if you were to sit in my office and watch the parking lot on Friday afternoons, there are families from New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, Ohio, all arriving to play in the Ripken Experience on the weekend. So they usually show up about 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday to check into their hotel and check out the complex. And then they play all day from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. on Saturday. They play 8 a.m. to about 5 p.m. on Sunday, and then they're gone Monday morning. That's about 75 to 80% of their programming. They do still have a couple weeks of summer camp for kids who come to sleepaway summer camp when it's not a pandemic. And then they do have 2 or 3 weeks of what they call week-long tournaments during the summer, where families come and stay for 6 nights and compete against teams from all over the country and even around the world. We get teams from Florida, California, Minnesota, New York, the Philippines. We had a team from the Dominican Republic come one year. Japan has come. And this is all separate from the Cal Ripken World Series, which no longer happens in Aberdeen. So they do play a lot. And when the Ironbirds are out of town, they do use Ripken Stadium, which is a thrill for the kids to play in a real professional baseball stadium for 13 years and older.
Jack, will you be there in mid-July?
I will be here. We have home games July 20th through the 31st in July. So I will be here. I'll be here every Monday through Friday plus game days, because my wife says, get out of the house, you're bugging me. Go to the stadium.
I just want to give you fair warning, because July 18th through the 22nd, you will be experiencing an onslaught of girls ages 10 to 18.
We're very excited for Miss Siegel's tournament to come and play here.
Oh yeah, I'm very excited too, because I'm going to be umpiring there that week. So we're all looking forward to it very much.
Good. Well, we're excited. The tournament is going to be obviously not unique, because these tournaments happen all the time, but unique to Aberdeen. We haven't had an opportunity to host before, and I think that it's great for the game. I think it's great for everyone who gets to be a part of it.
It is an amazing experience for anybody that's in the area. If you've never experienced the thrill of hearing the shouts and cries of absolute unadulterated pure joy coming from hundreds of girls throwing the baseball, hitting the baseball, just being there with their friends, it is like nothing you've ever experienced. Just so positive and life affirming. It's really wonderful. So July 18th through the 22nd, anybody that's near there, come on out and watch the girls play and support them if you can.
Yeah, it's going to be really fun. And the great thing about the Ripken Experience is that it is an open complex. There's no admission required. You're welcome to bring your peanut butter sandwich to the Ripken Experience, not to Ripken Stadium. I will charge you for a cheeseburger, but the Ripken Experience youth baseball facility, they allow outside food and beverage, lawn chairs, come and enjoy a game. I still think, having seen a lot of facilities in my life, I still think it's the nicest youth baseball complex in America. But I know there are others that would challenge me for that. Rock, do you have a comment?
Yeah, just one quick question. It's been my experience that usually management in minor leagues, it's more of a, since it's a business side, how many former players like yourself are in GMs or assistant GMs at the minor league level, since, like you said, it's more of a business thing than a baseball thing?
It is very rare. It is very rare, and I wish there were more of us. I think that I could use somebody who I could talk to about the balance between the baseball side and the business side. We're all familiar with the silly promotions that take place in indie ball. We've all seen, the player for a day and the little person who gets an at bat, and the things that are maybe not traditionally baseball that happen over there, which are fun and exciting and business oriented, and they're great promotions and they sell tickets, versus the more traditional baseball stuff. So I think it's something I wish there were more of us, but I don't know what it is about transitioning from the field to the front office that does not happen very often. I think a lot of guys want to become scouts and coaches, or go coach their kids' little league team and sell real estate when they're done playing professional baseball. That happens a lot. All right. Well, if you guys don't mind, I've got a baseball game in 6 hours or 5 hours and 57 minutes, and I've got some stuff I've got to do, but I appreciate you having me. If there's anything else that I can do for anybody, please feel free to let me know. Anything to close with?
I am excited about the girls tournament. I think SABR needs to do something to involve us with that event, and I'm going to look into that.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Bruce.
I just discovered I'll be down the 22nd.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jack. We appreciate obviously taking the time. We know you're tired because you did opening last night, and congrats on the win.
Thanks.
I'll be in touch. Hopefully next year with the convention coming up, we can have either the Ironbirds and or the Ripken baseball involved.
Wonderful.
Because obviously you're part of the Baltimore baseball heritage and everything that's going on here in Maryland.
Super. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it.
I'd like to be up and see a game this year.
Wonderful. Go
All right,
Ironbirds.
guys. Have a good day.
Thank you very much. That was super.